For the price of a long weekend in Tokyo, you can spend a full week on South Korea's southeast coast, and honestly, the food might be better. Korea's Gyeongsang region starts in Busan, the country's great port city, and runs north through a royal capital where kings sleep under enormous grass-covered burial mounds, mountain temples guarding 800-year-old relics, and a shoreline so dramatic it makes you stop walking just to look. Most visitors to South Korea don't leave Seoul. Gyeongsang is where Koreans themselves go on holiday for the seafood, the history, and the largest fish market in South Korea sprawls along the waterfront near Nampodong, and walking through the ground floor is an assault on every sense in the best way possible. Tanks of live octopus, rows of crabs stacked like cordwood, sea squirts and abalone and creatures you won't find an English name for. The system here is beautifully simple. Pick what you want from the vendors downstairs, haggling is expected and half the fun, and they send it upstairs to the restaurant floor where it's prepared however you like. Sashimi platters for two run about 20 to 30,000 won, roughly $15 to $20. Go before 9 in the morning when the auction energy is still raw and the aisles are wet and chaotic and alive. By midday, the place fills with tour groups and the prices nudge upward. The second floor restaurants stay open until evening, so there's no rush on the eating side, just on the buying. But Busan isn't only about what comes out of the water. 10 minutes uphill by taxi from Jagalchi, or a steep 20-minute walk if your legs agree, Gamcheon Culture Village sits at an entirely different frequency. In the 1950s, this was a refugee settlement clinging to the hillside above the harbour. Over the past 15 years, artists have transformed it into something like a Korean Positano painted by someone who grew up on comic books. Pastel houses stack up the slope in layers, connected by narrow alleys lined with murals, sculptures, and small studios. The Little Prince statue near the top draws a crowd for photos, but the real pleasure is getting slightly lost in the back lanes, where the art is stranger and the views over Busan's harbour open up unexpectedly between buildings. Allow about an hour and a half. Entry to the village itself is free, though the small galleries inside charge a couple of thousand won each. On the way down, grab a cup of shikye, sweet rice drink, from one of the lane-side vendors. 25 minutes northeast along the coast by bus or taxi, the city gives way to pine trees, and then to open ocean, and then to something that genuinely catches you off guard. Haeinsa Temple sits right on the cliff edge, practically in the sea. Most Korean temples tuck themselves deep into mountains. This one chose the water instead, and the effect is extraordinary. You descend a long stone staircase through forest, and then suddenly the Pacific is everywhere, crashing against the rocks below the prayer halls, spraying mist across stone lanterns, filling the air with salt. The temple was founded in 1376, destroyed, rebuilt, and on a clear morning, the light off the water makes the golden Buddha glow in a way that feels earned rather than staged. There's no entry fee, unusual for a site this significant. The path down involves about 108 steps, that number intentional, one for every worldly desire in Buddhist teaching. Get here before 10 in the morning and you'll share the place with monks and a handful of early risers. By noon, it's a different story entirely. After the temple's cliff-edge solitude, Busan pulled you back to its livelier side. Haeundae Beach is the city's main stretch of sand, wide, clean, and in July and August packed tight enough that finding a towel-sized spot becomes a competitive sport. Outside those peak months, though, the beach clears out considerably, and the boardwalk turns into a pleasant evening walk with city lights reflecting off wet sand. The real draw here might be what's just off the beach. Haeundae's side streets are dense with raw fish restaurants, pojang matcha tent bars that appear after sunset like a second city, and Korean street food done exactly right. Hot eggs stuffed with seeds and brown sugar, tteokbokki in paper cups, fish cake skewers for about 1,000 won each. After dark, cross the bay to Gwangali Beach, where the diamond bridge lights up in shifting colours and the whole waterfront becomes an open-air scene. Families with kids, couples on dates, solo travellers sitting on the sand with fried chicken and cold beer from the nearest convenience store. That's about as Korean an evening as you'll find anywhere in the country. An hour north by express bus or a quick KTX ride to Gyeongju station, the entire register of the trip shifts. Gyeongju was the capital of the Silla dynasty for nearly 1,000 years, and the density of UNESCO World Heritage Sites packed into this small city is unlike anything else in East Asia. Begin at Haeinsa Temple, about 20 minutes from downtown by local bus. Built in 528 and expanded through the 8th century, Bulguksa is one of those rare places where you feel the weight of deep time without any heaviness. The stone bridges are original, over 1,000 years old, and still perfectly standing. Wooden halls and twin stone pagodas align with a mathematical harmony that spoke to the Silla understanding of the cosmos. From the temple, a well-marked 3-kilometre trail climbs through forest to Sokgurum Grotto, where a massive granite Buddha sits inside a domed stone cave facing the East Sea. The grotto was engineered so that on certain mornings the sunrise enters the cave and illuminates the Buddha's face directly. A combined ticket for both sites is about 6,000 won, less than $5, and the forest walk between them takes about 40 minutes, one of the most peaceful stretches you'll find anywhere in South Korea. Back in Gyeongju's centre, Daering-won Tumuli Park is something you genuinely won't encounter anywhere else. Dozens of enormous grass-covered burial mounds, some over 20 metres high, sit scattered across a flat park right in the middle of town. Each one holds Silla royalty, gold crowns, jade ornaments, buried 1,500 years ago while Europe was still deep in its dark ages. You walk between the mounds on manicured paths, the modern city visible beyond the tree line, daily life proceeding around these ancient graves as though this were perfectly normal, and here it is. One mound, Chonmachong, the heavenly horse tomb, has been hollowed out so you can walk inside and see the burial chamber and replica artifacts up close. Entry is about 3,000 won. But Gyeongju is a different city after dark. The nearby Donggung Palace and Welji Pond light up at night, and this is Gyeongju at its most atmospheric. Palace walls reflecting perfectly in still water, everything lit gold from below, with dark forested hills behind. A small night market nearby sells Gyeongju Pang, the city's famous red bean pastries, still warm from the mould. The whole downtown area is flat and compact, and you can rent bikes for a few thousand won near the bus terminal to cover everything comfortably in a long afternoon. 2 hours northwest by bus from Gyeongju, the tempo changes completely. Andong is inland, quieter, and steeped in Korea's Confucian heritage in a way that feels lived rather than performed. The reason to come here is Hahoe Folk Village, a living settlement of thatched and tiled-roofed houses dating back to the Joseon dynasty, still home to descendants of the original families who built them. UNESCO gave the entire village World Heritage status, and walking through it feels like slipping through a thin membrane into another century. Children play in the lanes, smoke rises from kitchen chimneys. The Nakdong River bends around the village in a wide protective curve, and from the cliff on the opposite bank, reached by a short ferry ride, the view down over the rooftops and the river is the kind you remember clearly years later. Hahoe also hosts traditional mask dance performances, where sharp social satire meets ceremony in a uniquely Korean art form that has been running for centuries. Weekend performances last about an hour. Village entry is around 5,000 won. Small restaurants inside the village serve traditional Andong chimdak, soy-braised chicken with glass noodles, a dish which was invented right here and tastes like it. From Andong, the route swings west into mountains that grow taller and greener with every passing kilometre. After about 2 hours of increasingly beautiful driving through Gyeongsang National Park, you reach Haeinsa, one of Korea's 3 jewel temples, and home to something quietly extraordinary. The Tripitaka Koreana is a collection of over 80,000 individual woodblocks, each one hand-carved with Buddhist scriptures in the 13th century. They've survived Mongol invasions, Japanese occupations, and Korean wars, protected inside specially designed storage holes, whose natural ventilation systems still regulate temperature and humidity without a single piece of modern technology. Engineers have studied these buildings and concluded they couldn't significantly improve on the 800-year-old design. You can view the blocks through latticed windows, stacked floor to ceiling, rows deep, the accumulated spiritual knowledge of an entire civilization carved into wood. The temple grounds spread across the mountainside in quiet terraces, and the hiking trails deeper into Gyeongsang are excellent. This summer trail takes about 4 hours round trip with some steep sections, but shorter loops of an hour or two stay manageable for most fitness levels and are well worth the effort. Temple entry is about 4,000 won. Turning back toward the coast, roughly 2 hours south by car from Haeinsa, the small port city of Tongyang sits on a peninsula surrounded by islands, carrying a completely different energy from anywhere else on this trip. This is a working fishing town first and a destination second, and that priority is precisely what makes it good. The Hahoe cable car, the longest overwater cable car in Korea, stretches more than 1.5 kilometers across open sea to the summit of Myeoksan. From the top, on a clear day, you can count dozens of islands scattered across the South Sea, some green and inhabited, most just rock and pine trees and silence. Back at sea level, the Gangwon port area is where the serious eating happens. Raw sea bream, grilled shellfish, and Tongyang's signature dish, Chungmu gimbap, tight little rice rolls served with spicy squid and pickled radish, named for the city's old name. A generous seafood lunch runs about 10 to 15,000 won per person. Wander up from the port afterwards to the Dongpirang mural village, smaller and calmer than Gamcheon back in Busan, and the sea views from the painted alleys are arguably better. 2 bridges connect Tongyang to Gyeongju, South Korea's second largest island, and the final stop on this route through Korea's southeast. The coastline here turns more dramatic than anything on the mainland. Jagged cliffs, secluded pebble coves, and water shifting between emerald and deep navy, depending on the light and the hour. The Windy Hill observation point sends you along wooden cliff-edge walkways, with the sea churning far below and the wind doing exactly what the name promises. It's a popular photo spot, and deservedly so. From Jeoje's southern port at Jasingpo, a 40-minute ferry crosses to Wado Botania, a privately owned island garden where subtropical plants grow among European-style terraces overlooking open Pacific horizon. It's a strange and genuinely beautiful combination. Korean island, Mediterranean garden, endless blue in every direction, all at once. The ferry and island entry cost about 15,000 won. Families especially enjoy this one. The garden paths are flat and easy, the boat ride adds a sense of adventure, and kids tend to treat the whole island like a treasure hunt. It's a good way to end a trip through Gyeongsang, standing on an island garden at the edge of the Pacific with the whole southeast coast stretched out behind you. South Korea's Gyeongsang coast has a way of quietly overturning every assumption you showed up with. That Korea means Seoul, that the food can't really be that good for that little money, that a royal capital from 1,000 years ago can still feel genuinely alive. This stretch of the country gives you coastline and mountains, history measured in dynasties, and meals you'll think about for months after you're home. The KTX from Seoul to Busan takes 2.5 hours, What you find at the other end takes considerably longer to leave you.